The morning sun streamed through the stained-glass windows of Jefferson County Courthouse. Inside, the courtroom was calm. Lawyers whispered among themselves. Papers shuffled. The soft creak of wooden benches filled the silence. At the front of the courtroom, Judge Danielle Brooks adjusted her black robe and glanced at her docket. At just 42, she was the youngest and only black woman ever appointed to the district bench. Known for her fair rulings and firm presence, she had built her reputation on dignity and discipline. Court was about to begin when the large double doors slammed open. Heads turned. A tall, bulky white police officer stormed in, Officer Derek Slade. His boots echoed sharply on the floor as he marched toward the bench. Murmurs spread. Everyone knew Slade, cocky, aggressive, feared by civilians and even fellow officers. He was a man who walked like rules didn't apply to him. Judge Brooks narrowed her eyes. "You're not on today's docket, Officer Slade," she said, voice steady. Slade scoffed and kept walking. "Yeah, well, I've got something to say," he barked. The bailiff stepped forward. "You need to sit or leave, officer." Slade ignored him and pointed at Judge Brooks. "You don't belong in that seat. Not someone like you." The courtroom froze. The words cut through the air like a blade. Gasps echoed. The judge's expression didn't change. Calm, composed. "Officer Slade," she said firmly, "you're out of line. Leave now, or I will hold you in contempt." Slade's jaw clenched. "I don't take orders from your kind." And then, in one horrifying instant, he reached for his gun. A scream broke out, but what Slade didn't know, every second of it was being recorded. The moment Officer Slade pulled his weapon, the entire courtroom transformed into chaos. Lawyers dove behind their desks. Spectators ducked beneath benches. A mother shielded her child. The room, once a place of order, now buzzed with fear. But Judge Danielle Brooks didn't flinch. She sat motionless, her hands flat on the bench, eyes locked onto Slade. Her heartbeat was racing, but her face remained composed. Years of serving justice had taught her how to face pressure, but never like this. "Put the gun down," she said slowly, each word sharp and measured. Slade sneered. "You think that robe makes you powerful. You're a disgrace to this court." Behind the scenes, what Slade had failed to notice was a discreet red light, barely visible, embedded into the judge's bench. A hidden camera, part of a new security measure, recorded everything in high definition: the gun, the threats, the hatred. Phones began buzzing under the tables. Someone had already called 911. Another was live streaming from a cracked screen. The world outside was starting to watch. Judge Brooks didn't break eye contact. "If you shoot me, you don't just kill a judge. You kill your badge, your freedom, your name. Think about it." Slade's hand trembled slightly. Pride and hate burned in his eyes, but somewhere deep he was losing control. He hadn't planned for this moment, only the anger. From the corner, the bailiff took a cautious step. "Officer Slade, backup is on the way. Don't make this worse." But Slade didn't budge. He waved the gun toward the audience. "Everyone stay down. Nobody moves." Judge Brooks's voice rose, firm as stone. "You are surrounded by the law, officer, and the law is watching." And indeed it was, through cameras, phones, and a lens Slade couldn't see. While the courtroom trembled under the weight of Officer Slade's threats, something far more powerful was silently at work. Tucked inside the woodwork behind Judge Brooks's bench, the hidden security camera continued recording, capturing every detail: the angle of Slade's trembling hand, the judge's unflinching eyes, the sheer terror of the courtroom. The camera wasn't just for evidence, it was part of a new federal pilot program to protect judges in high-risk regions. Judge Brooks had personally approved it after a local DA received death threats. Now, it was the one thing standing between justice and denial. Down below, a young intern named Alina crouched beneath the jury box. Her hands shook as she whispered into her phone, "Yes, he's armed. Yes, inside courtroom 3. Send SWAT. Please hurry." In the corner, a civil rights attorney, Mr. Wallace, discreetly positioned his phone above the bench, quietly live-streaming the ordeal to his followers. Within minutes, hundreds were watching, then thousands. The words "White cop aims gun at black judge" lit up social feeds like wildfire. Outside, the sound of sirens started to build. Slade's eyes darted toward the doors. He was sweating now, torn between dominance and panic. He wasn't expecting resistance, and certainly not from her. Judge Brooks noticed the flicker of doubt in his eyes. "You want to be seen as powerful?" she said, voice steady. "Then show restraint. Prove you're more than your hate." Slade growled. "You don't tell me who I am." But the truth was, he was already exposed. The camera above her nameplate saw him clearly. His legacy was being carved into history, not as a hero but as a threat. And outside that door, justice was rapidly approaching. The wail of sirens grew louder, closer. A ripple of hope moved through the courtroom, but no one dared to stand. Officer Slade still had his gun raised, now shifting between Judge Brooks and the doors behind her. His posture was rigid, his pride holding on, even as reality began to crumble around him. Outside, police units screeched to a stop. SWAT officers poured from black armored vans. Within seconds, the courthouse perimeter was sealed, snipers taking positions, negotiators gearing up. Inside, unaware of the camera and the live stream now trending across platforms, Slade still believed he was in control. Judge Brooks sat upright, still calm. "You hear that, Officer Slade? That's your world closing in." Slade laughed bitterly. "They won't touch me. I've worn this badge for 18 years. They'll back me up before they back you." "No," Brooks replied quietly. "Not this time." From the side entrance, a new figure emerged, tall, composed, dressed in a crisp federal suit. His voice boomed across the silent courtroom. "Officer Derek Slade, drop your weapon. This is Special Agent Marcus Hayes with the FBI." Slade whipped around, startled. His eyes widened for just a second. Marcus stepped forward slowly, both hands visible. "You're threatening a federal judge in her courtroom. That's not just a crime, it's a disgrace." Slade's fingers clenched around the gun. "She doesn't deserve that bench." Marcus took another step. "That's not your decision to make. You're being recorded. There's no escape here, Derek. No spin, no backup, no shield." The courtroom was silent again, but this time the tension had shifted. Slade was no longer the one with power. It hung now in Marcus's calm authority and Judge Brooks' unshaken resolve. And the hidden camera? Still recording it all. For the first time since storming into the courtroom, Officer Slade hesitated. His hands, once steady with rage, now trembled slightly. Sweat ran down his forehead. The room wasn't just tense, it was frozen in history. Everyone knew one wrong move, and this would become a tragedy seen around the world. Special Agent Marcus Hayes kept moving forward, slow and firm. "You're scared, Derek, I can see it. But you still have a choice. Don't let your hate write the last chapter of your life." Slade's jaw tightened. His eyes shifted back to Judge Brooks. She sat unmoved, as if carved from stone. Her calmness was terrifying to him, not because she lacked fear, but because she had control. The very thing he was losing. "I won't be judged by her," Slade muttered, as if convincing himself. "You already are," Brooks said, her voice low but powerful. "And not just by me, by everyone watching, by every officer who wears the badge with integrity, by your own conscience, if any of it's still left." The hidden camera above her glowed quietly, unnoticed still by Slade, but very much online. Footage had already been picked up by news outlets, live stream clips shared on national broadcasts. His name trended with headlines like "Rogue Officer Threatens Black Judge and Courtroom Terror Caught on Tape." Slade looked around, not for escape, but for options. There were none. Outside, a voice from the intercom crackled. "Derek Slade, this is Commander Wells with the Metro SWAT team. We have the building surrounded. Drop your weapon. This is your final warning." Marcus stepped closer, only a few feet away now. "Do the right thing, Derek. Don't go out as a coward." Slade's lips quivered. The room held its breath. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Officer Slade's eyes darted between the FBI agent, the judge, and the courtroom doors now sealed shut. Outside, armed SWAT officers stood ready. Inside, every soul held their breath. Even the air felt heavy. Judge Brooks hadn't moved. She remained upright, composed, her gaze never wavering. It wasn't defiance, it was resilience. She represented more than just herself now. She was justice personified, staring hate in the face without fear. "Don't do it," Agent Marcus Hayes said, stepping even closer. "You think pulling that trigger will prove something. It'll only prove what we already see, that your hate runs deeper than your duty." Slade's gun slowly lowered, just an inch. His face was a twisted mix of shame, rage, and confusion. "They'll forget this," he muttered. "No," Judge Brooks replied firmly, "we won't. Because it's already recorded, every word, every threat. This moment will define you." Just then, the bailiff's radio crackled to life. Permission granted. Entry in 10 seconds. Marcus raised his hand. "Wait," he said softly into the air, eyes locked on Slade. The officer's hand finally dropped all the way. He let the gun slip from his fingers. It hit the floor with a loud metallic clatter that echoed across the courtroom. Immediately, the doors burst open. SWAT officers rushed in, weapons raised. They tackled Slade to the ground, cuffing him with swift precision. He didn't resist. The crowd exhaled all at once, a collective release of fear and tension. Judge Brooks finally closed her eyes, just for a moment. Outside the courthouse, crowds had already gathered. Reporters, protesters, supporters, all waiting to see what Justice would do next. Inside, Justice had already spoken, not with bullets, but with courage. Officer Slade was dragged from the courtroom in silence, now restrained, his badge clipped off and shoved into an evidence bag. His face, once twisted with arrogance, was now pale and hollow. The cameras outside caught everything. Reporters shouted questions, microphones thrust forward. But Slade didn't answer. He couldn't. The weight of what he had done had finally sunk in. Inside, the courtroom remained still. Phones buzzed, messages poured in, but no one moved until Judge Brooks stood. The crowd, still shaken, slowly began to rise with her. Dignity in motion, authority intact. She gave a small nod to Agent Hayes. "Thank you," she said softly. "You didn't need me," Marcus replied with a small smile. "You held that room better than any SWAT team could." Outside the courthouse, the public response was immediate and overwhelming. Footage from the hidden camera, paired with phone recordings and live streams, flooded social media. Within hours, hashtags like #JudgeBrooks, #CourtroomCourage, and #SladeExposed trended worldwide. Talk shows picked up the story. Civil rights activists called it a turning point. Even fellow judges issued public statements of support. People saw in Judge Brooks a symbol of restraint, of resilience, and of righteous authority. But Slade wasn't just a viral clip, he was now a federal case. Within 48 hours he was charged with attempted assault of a federal judge, abuse of power, threatening a government official with a deadly weapon. He was denied bail. Back in her chambers, Danielle sat quietly, reviewing court documents. Her hands still trembled faintly, but her mind was clear. This wasn't just about survival. It was about standing firm in the face of hatred and not letting it win. And in that courtroom, hatred had been arrested, and justice had remained seated. 2 weeks later, the courtroom was full once again, but the roles had reversed. Officer Derek Slade, once feared in uniform, now wore an orange jumpsuit. His wrists were chained, his gaze lowered. No badge, no gun, no power. The gallery was packed. Journalists, activists, law students, retired judges, and everyday citizens who had followed every second of the viral footage. Cameras lined the back wall. Live streams were rolling. The world was watching. Judge Danielle Brooks entered the room. Dressed in her black robe, she looked poised and composed, but there was an edge of solemnity to her presence. Today wasn't about pride, it was about principle. She sat in the same chair Slade had once tried to rip her from, only now her authority had doubled. She represented more than herself. She represented every woman, every person of color, and every victim of abuse who had been told they weren't enough. The prosecution opened with strength. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is not just about a man pulling a weapon. It is about what happens when hate wears a badge. It is about a direct attack on the very idea of justice." The courtroom watched as footage from the hidden camera played across a screen. Slade's voice rang out, "You don't belong in that seat." Then came the moment. The gun raised, the threat, the unwavering calm of the judge. No one breathed. The defense attempted a weak argument. Slade had been under stress. He'd lost control. It wasn't premeditated. But the jury's faces were hard. No one believed the excuses. Judge Brooks watched quietly from the bench, emotion in her eyes, but not revenge. She didn't want vengeance. She wanted truth to be seen. And now, the truth was projected on every screen in America. The jury deliberated for just under 4 hours, but for those waiting, it felt like days. The courtroom was silent when the foreperson returned, a folded piece of paper in hand, hands slightly trembling. Judge Danielle Brooks straightened in her seat, her face unreadable. She nodded. The clerk unfolded the paper and read, "We, the jury, find the defendant, Officer Derek Slade, guilty on all counts." Gasps rippled through the room. The gallery erupted, but the judge raised her hand gently. Silence returned. Slade sat motionless. For the first time he looked small. The arrogant swagger was gone. His eyes searched the room for sympathy, but none came. Not from the jury, not from the gallery. and certainly not from the bench. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Slade, you not only disgraced the badge, but you attempted to dismantle the very justice system you swore to uphold. You saw power, not duty, intimidation, not service. Today, justice responds." Her voice was powerful, yet restrained. "I hereby sentence you to 15 years in a federal penitentiary, without the possibility of parole, for the first 10... The cameras caught everything. His stunned expression, his mother's silent sobs, the flash of reporters' phones. But what captured the nation's heart was what happened next. A young black girl sitting with her father in the gallery stood up and whispered, "She looks like me." That clip went viral instantly. Millions of people watched that moment. Judge Brooks, unshaken, delivering justice in the face of hate, and saw hope. Within hours, hashtags like #JusticeServed and #JudgeBrooks trended worldwide. But while justice had won the day, the judge knew this case was only the beginning. She had become a symbol, and that came with a cost. Judge Danielle Brooks stepped into her chambers, the heavy door clicking shut behind her. For a moment she stood still, alone with the weight of what had just unfolded. Justice had been served, yes, but the scars from the ordeal remained. As she removed her robe, her assistant entered with a stack of letters. "They've been pouring in all day," she said softly. From all over the country, schools, community groups, survivors of injustice. Danielle sifted through the notes. One read, "For the first time, I believe the system can work for people like me. Thank you." Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the realization that her actions had sparked something greater than a courtroom victory. She had become more than a judge. She had become a symbol of resistance, courage, and change. Meanwhile, media outlets buzzed. News anchors debated the ripple effects of the verdict. The hidden camera footage of Officer Slade's threats, captured in chilling detail, was now mandatory viewing in police training academies. Civil rights groups hailed it as a landmark case in judicial history. But behind all the praise, Danielle faced real threats too. Her security detail was increased. Hate mail trickled in. Yet, her resolve only strengthened. She began working quietly with lawmakers, pushing for legislation on courtroom safety and officer accountability. One evening, as she left a speaking engagement, a young black law student approached her. "Judge Brooks," he said nervously, "I want to be like you." She smiled. "No," she replied, "be better." The story of the arrogant cop and the judge he tried to intimidate had ended, but a new chapter for justice, representation, and truth had just begun. If you believe in standing up against injustice and using your voice to create change, share this story. Let the world know that no one is above the law, and courage, even in silence, changes everything.